Can we please forget about Donald Trump and get about the task of fixing our broken immigration system? That's right, Trump supporters. If you want to fix the immigration mess, if you want to solve the immigration problem, you have to abandon and abrogate Donald Trump. Because Donald Trump is not a border hawk. Donald Trump does not believe in controlling the border. He is an amnesty shill. He is straight out of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. He is everything that you people claim to despise and oppose. And you just don't want to admit it. You've emotionally invested in this man. And he has accordingly taken that trust and flouted it in order to fool you, bilk you, swindle you, hoodwink you. He has made fools of you all. He has humiliated you, especially on immigration. Now, Kevin Williamson has great advice for you, and it's the same advice I just gave you. Forget Donald Trump. Forget Donald Trump and focus on the problem. U.S. immigration law is a mess, and U.S. immigration law enforcement is a worse mess, courtesy of Barack Hussein Obama. Now, it is a fixable mess if we wanted to fix it, and that includes you Trump supporters. But we don't, and you proved it by supporting Donald Trump. It's not a mess that's fixable by Donald Trump, even if he had the inclination. Trump is a fantasist, nominated and supported by fantasists. And chances are excellent that those fantasies will come to an abrupt and brutal end on November 8th. However the election turns out, we will still be left with the same mess. And thanks to Trump supporters, we will have President Hillary Clinton to keep it in place for at least another 4 years or sooner if she keels over. Now, much of that mess is a result of destructive political incentives and extraordinarily shallow political thinking. For example, we are often told that we cannot deport 30 million or so illegals in a matter of a few years, or at least that we cannot do that without relying on invasive, inhumane methods and policies. And that's probably true, but no serious person, and I'm afraid this excludes all of the major presidential candidates, has that as plan A. Yeah, Trump's already told you. He's already told you, Trump supporters, we're not going to deport anybody. You're not going to deport anybody. And you bought into it, didn't you? Suckers. But can we deport or force the self-deportation of, to use the wrongly maligned term, most of the very large share of the illegal aliens who are here mainly for economic purposes? Absolutely. And should we? Yes. Parenthetically, remember who originally suggested that 4 years ago? That would be Mitt Romney, who many of you Trump supporters could not stand, could not bring yourselves to vote for, and yet who has been proven right time and again over the past 4 years. And you were afraid because he'd have divided loyalties. Why, he might be more loyal to the Mormon Church than he would be to the Constitution. So you went for a deranged National Socialist yam instead. Oh yeah, that was a much better choice. As I have argued for some time, We could do a great deal to reduce and reverse illegal immigration by taking 5 fairly straightforward steps that do not even require building a wall, though there are sections of the border that certainly should be walled. Those steps are: 1, in no particular order, passing a law that forbids anyone who is or who has been an illegal alien from ever becoming a U.S. citizen, even if his current status is legal. 2, passing a similar law that forbids anyone who is or has been an illegal alien from applying for a work permit, even if his current status is legal. 3, carrying out robust workplace enforcement through mandatory e-verify and the deployment of asset forfeiture against businesses convicted of employing illegal alien labor. 4, putting a citizen or non-citizen stamp on driver's licenses and requiring non-citizens to document their legal status when engaging in ordinary financial transactions, such as cashing a check or booking domestic travel. And 5, passing a law that forbids anyone who is or has been an illegal alien from ever legally entering the United States. Sounds like a plan to me. Now, this puts additional burdens on non-citizens residing in the United States, which is unfortunate for them, but which is nonetheless the most desirable place to put such burdens, while adding trivially to the regulatory burden of already heavily regulated institutions such as financial firms and airlines. It also adds trivially to the regulatory burdens endured by employers vis-a-vis new hires. Now, that isn't ideal, but neither is a lawless system of immigration or a Brownsville to Chula Vista wall that probably cannot or should not actually be built, and that would be at best only half effective in any case. Remember, you can tunnel under or climb over walls, Trump supporters. Now, the much smaller share of illegal aliens who are here for non-economic purposes, or those whose economic purpose is criminal, will have to be treated more or less the way they are now, though they would have a smaller and much more restricted illegal alien population among whom to hide. Now, this is not a 2-year project or a 5-year project. In other words, there's no quick fixes here. This is reality. It's probably more like a 20-year project, though one would expect to see radical improvements in a much shorter period of time, particularly if some future Justice Department could be inspired to get off its collective bureaucratic ass and put a few meat-packing executives and construction firm operators in prison for violating U.S. immigration and labor laws. In other words, it will take a long time and a lot of hard work and constant voter vigilance and involvement. It will go through multiple administrations. It will go through multiple Congresses. And it will be very important to keep working and well, first of all, get elected the people who will carry this out, and then keep them in office. And even then, there is ample potential and ample room, opportunity for failure, for setbacks, for defeats. Because, as American political history should have amply demonstrated by now, it is very difficult for one side to maintain power indefinitely. I mean, remember when George W. Bush, in his address to Congress after the 9/11 attacks, remember he said this is a going to be a long twilight struggle. It will outlive my administration, whether it's at the time 1 term or 2. It will have to be carried forward like the Cold War was. It was carried forward by administrations, Congresses of both parties. It was beyond politics, in other words. Which, of course, in turn highlights the great potential for failure and setbacks. Because is there an issue in this country in 2016 that is more politicized than immigration? But first of all, you Trump supporters have to start taking your pet issue seriously. And that means abandoning and forgetting about Donald Trump. Now, why do we want to do this? Why do we want to actually fix the immigration problem, take it seriously, and understand what a long and difficult struggle it's going to be? Well, the main reason, and the most obvious one, is that while we are indeed a nation of immigrants, like every other nation on the face of the planet, this polity, like any other polity, has the right to decide who joins it and on what terms. Those laws could be liberal or they could be very restrictive. But the worst situation is the one we have, meaning very strict laws in theory, but anarchy in practice. But it will be politically and practically impossible to go about amending our immigration laws in an intelligent way while we have lawless conditions, which invite both self-interested partisan grandstanding on both sides of the aisle and irresponsible demagoguery. If the European example tells us anything, it is that Donald Trump will not be the last of his kind. Reorganizing U.S. immigration law in a way that emphasizes the economic interests and cultural continuity of the United States rather than maintaining a chain immigration system that privileges the sometimes theoretical reunification of extended immigrant families over genuinely national concerns is a project that can only be coolly and rationally undertaken once the volatile problem of illegal immigration is under control. Emphasis on coolly and rationally, which has nothing to do with Donald Trump. Under control here should not be taken, as it so often is, as the precondition for amnesty and the path to citizenship. Even if, after doing all of the above, we were to decide at some date 20 years hence that the presumably smaller number of remaining illegal aliens should be granted legal residency, and there is no obvious reason to do that, there is no pressing need to extend citizenship to illegal aliens now or ever. People reside, sometimes permanently, in foreign countries for economic and other reasons all the time, and the decision to do so is fundamentally different from the decision to become a citizen of that country. The United States is a nation that is based on neither ethnicity nor any other old world blood and soil criterion, but on citizenship. Consequently, we should take citizenship seriously. The rule of law, Article 4, Section 4 of the United States Constitution, which means that it should be treated as an end in and of itself rather than as a means to some other end, such as a good job or domestic convenience. None of this should be especially controversial. Emphasis on should. None of this should be especially controversial. Lawfulness, as opposed to lawlessness, is preferable to lawlessness. And though we certainly have and should have a humane concern for the world's unhappy people, the responsibility of the government of these United States is to the citizens of these United States, not to the citizens of other countries as much as we might like to help them. And our humane considerations should be tempered by the knowledge that the economic consequences of continuing high levels of low-skilled immigration are borne most heavily not by native-born workers, who in fact benefit on net from lower prices, but by prior low-skilled immigrants, who tend to be concentrated in the same industries as the new ones and who suffer from the same economic limitations, such as limited English proficiency or lack of formal education. Assimilation is not only a cultural concern, but an economic one as well. And it is much more difficult to bring low-skilled immigrants into the economic mainstream with high levels of similar immigration. It's like I said on many occasions. You look back at the history of immigration in this country, and what do you see? Especially in the 19th century, you see periods of immigration, like in the middle of the 19th century from Ireland and other places in Northern Europe, or our portion of Europe, for lack of a better term. And then there was a pause, and immigration was cut off or significantly curtailed. And then it resumed again in the late 19th century from Southern and Eastern Europe. Poles, Italians, Greeks, Romanians, Hungarians, etc., etc. And then it paused again. In other words, America can take the world's poor, huddled masses yearning to be free, but not in an unending stream. There is a period of influx, and then there's a period of digestion, so to speak, of assimilation, acclimatization, becoming Americans, and then we can take the next one. But we need those periods of rest. We need those periods of intermission. We need the time to assimilate those who have come here and turn them into Americans. And then a generation later, we can take in the next batch and the next wave. But it has to be on our terms and per our laws. We can't just take in the whole world all at once. That's why we have an immigration problem in the first place. Because for my entire adult lifetime, for the past half century, there has been no restrictions on immigration for all intents and purposes. In practical terms, no restrictions, open the floodgates. Legal and illegal. Just pouring in without restriction, without control, without anything. That's why we have an immigration problem in the first place. And given that it's been going on for that long, it's become correspondingly that much of a problem. Trump supporters, do you really think that problem can be solved just like that? Because it can't. It's going to take time. And it's going to take vigilance. And it's going to take hard work. A wall is not going to solve the problem. Even if you could build it, a wall is not going to solve the problem. There's so much more to it than that. That's what you've got to understand. And that's what Donald Trump has studiously not told you. And that is the mark of the classic demagogue. That's why Donald Trump is an obstacle to fixing the immigration problem. Because he's telling you what you want to hear, and he's telling you it's going to be easy and someone else is going to pay for it. That sounds a lot like the Democrats, doesn't it? Oh, did that get your attention? I hope it did. I know it didn't, but I hope it did. Intelligent immigration reform will be complex and difficult, and it will take a long, long time, and it will take a great deal of work, and it will take a great deal of voter vigilance. Donald Trump is not the man for that job, but it is a job that somebody is going to have to do, and those somebodies will most likely and of necessity come from never Trump.